Hello, welcome to our conversation. That's what it is. It's a conversation between two friends who are going to talk about our life and about stories. And so I'm very pleased to have Barbara Doyle-Wilch as my partner today. And Barbara can introduce yourself in sort of background. But I want to talk with her about libraries first. So she can tell you more about that.
My experience with libraries?
Yeah.
Well, we were going to start when I was a little girl. And
Okay.
when I was young, my mother, who was a stay-at-home mom and terrifically bored being a stay-at-home mom, took the children, we had three children, to the public library almost every day. She was a huge reader, and it gave her the opportunity to drop the kids off in the children's room, and they would listen to stories, and she could explore on her own. But I think our childhood was all about reading and all about discovering new things that you can do through reading. So the outcome of that is a firm belief that I have that you can do anything you want if you know how to read. Because there's a book, and now it's on the computer, of course, which makes it even
Right.
easier. So.
That's right. So when did you think I could be a librarian?
Well, if I had thought about that when I was 18, I would have said there is no way I would ever work in a library. I was a dancer. I studied dance through a bachelor's and a master's degree, and danced professionally till I was about 30. And I had a kind of a very quick and upsetting health issue that came up and kind of stopped my dancing, and had to face, I have to earn a living, so what am I going to do? And of course, my next favorite thing was working in a library. So I went to library school when I was 30, which is a little bit older, and got a library degree.
What did you particularly like about being a librarian?
I liked the fact that every day there were questions. There were lots of questions. There were research questions in higher ed, and I worked in a public library, I even worked in a law library, but everybody comes with a question. What I loved about the role of the librarian is that I could answer the question, I could do the research, come up with the answer, but I never had to be graded on it. So I did all the learning part, but I never had to go through the grading.
You didn't have to pass a test.
I didn't have to pass the test or write the paper.
Never thought of it that way.
It was very fun, very fun. If you like a whole lot of different things, every day was like, whoa, what am I going to learn about today? Frogs or poetry or diseases or...
Did you work with a particular age, or did you like a children's librarian, or?
Probably one of the most interesting jobs I had was at a small place. It was called Sheridan, Colorado. It was a little bit south of Denver. And it was a community where the public library and the high school library were combined. And it was also a community where probably 80% of the population were Hispanic, and very low living poverty, very high poverty rate, low incomes. And so I was hired as the public librarian part, and there was a school librarian that I worked with. And it was interesting because one of the things that I discovered is, in years past, people thought, oh, it's Hispanic, so we'll buy a whole bunch of books in Spanish. And so on the shelf were all these books, Moby Dick, probably War and Peace, all the classics in Spanish. But what they didn't realize is that this community didn't read. They didn't read in English or Spanish. And so we started taking library services. I had some other people that were working with me out to where these people were, where they were getting aid. How do you get a driver's license? How do you survive a tax year? Who does taxes for you? And started doing really life important questions rather than literature. And that was that was in the 70s when libraries were saying, okay, we're not about setting a standard of literature and high learning for the community. We're about providing things that the community needs in order to survive. So that was a big turning point in my idea of what a library was and what good it can do a community.
So did you have some other places that you went after that and worked as a librarian in the around the needs issues?
Well, after that, I tended to be mainly in colleges and universities, and I worked in a lot of different colleges and universities. But the underlying question of what does a library do for its community to make their life better works whether you're in a community of lawyers or a community of scholars or a community of young people or whatever the community is. You have to figure out what they want and then how can you make that library respond to what they want in very kind of pragmatic ways. You know, how can I make your life better? I had a teacher in library school who I loved, and Roger Greer was his name, and he said one time, he said, you know, it's not our job to decide what the community would be better for. What we need to do is provide value to the community. So value is from their eyes. And he said, if somebody comes running in and says, I've got to use the restroom, do you have a restroom, do you have a restroom? And you have a restroom, you've provided a lot of service to that particular person. Just as much as giving a fabulous new read to you know, somebody else. So the value is all from the perspective of the person in the community.
Was that quite a shift in understanding librarians and what a librarian does? I mean, my image, you know, is folks who work with books and know the Dewey Decimal System, and can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, my very first job in libraries was at Indianapolis Public Library. And I was hired because I had a master's degree in dance from a school of music, and they wanted a music librarian. So I was the music librarian, but I worked with a whole lot of people in the arts division, all with very strong subject backgrounds rather than a library degree. We were not supposed to buy country western music because that would have been a reflection on a community. Even though that was the most popular selling music, the library had to hold it, what they thought was a standard. The library was not allowed to buy anything done by Walt Disney because that was too below us, too corny. I bought music, but it was classical music, no pop music, no rock and roll, no country western. Everything was setting a standard of what the library board felt should be the standard for the community and not lowering that standard. So reflecting your community was a huge change from those earlier libraries that mandated what the standards of the community would be.
That's right. They kind of, they knew, right? So therefore don't don't question that.
That's right. That's right.
And so the library boards had quite a bit of
absolutely. And a lot of libraries, Ilsley Library, as a matter of fact, you know, I believe started as a women's club, and they were setting the standard of fine literature for their community. You know, they were private for the most part in the early days.
And there was that sense that these. We saw it in the 60s and in the 70s where the standards were going to the dogs. And there was a wholly different kind of thing going on, and so you were part of that.
I was part of that. I started my Indianapolis Public Library job in 1969. And stayed there for 5 years or 3 years. Too far away, I don't remember. but we were not allowed to wear open-toed shoes or open-heeled shoes. It's too provocative to have your toes or your heels exposed. We had to wear our skirts at a certain length, and that was at a time when short skirts were, booming. We were also to be the standard of the community.
When did all that change?
It changed in the mid-'70s.
Okay.
I think I would say in the mid-'70s. I remember I moved to Colorado, and I was in Colorado at the end of mid to the end of the '70s, and that's when I studied this community-based library service at the University of Denver. I remember in Boulder, Colorado, which has a fabulous library, public library, the staff there started to wear jeans. And that just rocked the library world.
Right.
If you could work and not have to dress professionally, but could dress in jeans. Now the backside was people would say, "Well, you go in that library and you can't tell who's a librarian."
Right.
So they didn't like that. But I would say the mid to late '70s is when libraries.
And so you've been through that shift, but you've been through also the shift to the internet and technology. Can you say something about what's the story there for you?
The story, there's a great story that is reflected in several libraries. I get great joy out of building new buildings. And new library buildings are often 10 years in the making. And when technology came, which was around 1989, I think was the first library that I was involved with that was connected to the internet, the time just collapsed. So they built all these, this was at Augustana College in Rock Island, Illinois, brand new building, absolutely beautiful. They built all these index tables. They were long tables with room for Wilson's indexes and psych indexes and all those big bound books. By the time the library opened, those books had gone. It was all available online, and you didn't use the print indexes. So they had hundreds of thousands of dollars invested into these beautiful index tables that couldn't be used. We tried to reuse them for study tables, but
it didn't work.
It didn't work. But those kinds of changes, I mean, we built libraries to hold journals. We don't have journals anymore. They're all available online. So we're seeing the shrinking of certain things, and I can't say books have ever disappeared, and I don't believe they will, but they're changing. It used to be that 85% of the books that were used in a library were nonfiction. How do I do this? Nonfiction. Now 85% of a library's circulation is fiction. So people read stories more than they read nonfiction or about things. They're interested in the stories. Huge changes, and probably that's why I've been a librarian for over 40 years now, because it's always changing, and I enjoy that.
And you kept working at this from your own education as well, right?
Absolutely.
So can you tell us a little bit about
my education?
How that took you?
Well, I have to go back always to my dance career, because that's probably the most important thing that I've ever done. And even when I couldn't dance, one of the things, this is interesting in terms of storytelling.
Sure.
Dance it's all about you and the audience. It isn't about are you Sleeping Beauty or Giselle or it's about how you can get the audience to feel what you are feeling. So you're telling a story without words. You're trying to elicit an understanding or a feeling. And if you take that to any job that you have, it isn't just doing the job, it's impacting the audience, impacting other people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
And to do that, you have to look at their eyes. You have to look at their body language. Look ooh, did I feel that? Oh, yes, I did feel that. They always used to say when you did a développé, which is extension of the leg, you extend the leg, but then you extend it a little further. And you want everybody in the audience to have a little twitch in their leg, that they feel that muscular movement. And they twitch a little bit, They, ooh, yeah, that felt good. So
do you hear that sound?
Yeah.
But
So,
you see it, right?
Yeah, you see it. So I took that on my journey in my life. If I can't understand why people come to a library, or even if they don't, why they don't come to a library, if I don't understand what makes them fulfilled, or what makes them happy, or what makes them sad, or what makes them want to do something a little bit more, then I can't buy materials or provide materials or profile materials that will enrich their lives. And to me, that's what a library is all about. It's connecting people with materials that will enrich their lives, either cognitively or viscerally or whatever. That's our job.
And this is true in all kinds of expressions of dance.
I think so. I do think so.
What would you prefer? Or what?
I love all kinds of dance. There are some genres right now where it's kind of like visual arts, where the angst of the person's being is what they want the audience to feel. And in ballet, it's beauty is what they want you to walk away with, a sense of beauty. But I think that's true in all the arts. I love hip hop. I love street dancing. I think any form of dance and mime, as you know, anything that elicits a response without words is fascinating to me. And that could be visual arts as well.
So, so do you still dance yourself?
This old body doesn't dance much anymore,
but you move.
But I do move, and I teach dancers.
I teach
dancers, and I think one of the things that I've developed over the years is an eye. I can watch people and correct them or put them in a better place, and that's probably my strength as a teacher, is that I can.
You can see how they're moving, and what would make this even more powerful.
Powerful, or smoother, or not so dangerous to the physical body.
Right.
It's an eye for things.
And you teach at the college?
I do. I teach 2 ballet classes a week during the semesters, and I have wonderful students. Some are just starting, and others have been trained for 16 years, beautifully trained. Some come from very, very good schools. So it's a mishmash of people, but they all love dance. And I just teach ballet, that's all.
Yeah, okay. So ballet, it seems to me there's a whole set of language that you don't use, but you need to execute. Is that?
Oh, it's all in French.
It's all
in French.
It's all in French.
But I had
I would be in trouble.
Yeah, I had a really interesting experience. I have taken ballet class probably 6 days a week from the time I was 8 until I was 30. When I was 30, I had a brain aneurysm, and I lost my vocabulary. But I went to a ballet class, and the guy said, glissade, assemblée, jeté, pas de bourrée. And my brain didn't understand what he was saying, but my body remembered the movements and could copy the movements, and then put the words back in my head that matched up the muscular reaction to pattern.
That was a slow process, I imagine.
Not so slow.
No, or did it go?
Not so slow. Yeah, maybe
quickly?
6 months to a year. I was, back.
And dance made that possible, right?
Well, it puts, when you do things a lot, the memory goes into your muscles instead of into your brain. So when you get old, like I am, and
like
you can't remember somebody's name, or oh my gosh, what was the name of that town? My legs will always be able to dance. It may not look too good, but they remember the movements because they're patterned. And I don't have to think about what I'm doing. My legs just automatically do them.
I think one of the things that caught me about dance was we went to the movies a lot. That's how I babysat my kid sister. On Saturday, we would sometimes go to as many as 6 movies because we had 3 theaters in town. I always liked the ones with dance, but I couldn't get my feet to do that. And I particularly liked the ones with tap dance and the jazz part. And I think there was a kind of sense of respect for African Americans who were not in my town, but they were on the screen, and there was I think, I don't know for sure, but
I think, and again, this goes back to the library story. If you have a passion for doing something, you can learn how to do it. Most of us don't give enough of ourselves into the passion. I always said I was the worst piano player in the whole world. I took lessons, and it was terrible. I was terrible. And I still take lessons, and I still try to play, and I'm terrible, just terrible. But I'm reminded of the hours and hours I put into dance versus the 30 minutes a week I put into piano, and then beat myself up for being so bad. I think we have this sense that we want to immediately be a star, or shuffle step, brush ball, change. I want to be able to do that after 20 minutes.
Right.
And it takes hours and hours and hours. Who is it? Malcolm Gladwell said in one of his books that the Beatles, before they became famous, played for over, I think, 10,000 hours in really awful little bar bands.
Yes.
Before they became popular. But I think the same thing is true with dance or music or even art. You have to pour your passion into it and put in the hours.
You have to be willing to find life there and give life there. You and I could talk about trying to tell a story without using words because of one experience we had with mime. Do you want to tell that story, or do you want me to?
Well,
or want me to keep quiet?
No, you can keep going. But I have to say that the experience, first of all, of saying, Len, I'm going to do this mime thing for the annual meeting of counseling service, but you're going to do it with me.
Yeah.
And you said yes, and I thought, I never dreamed he'd say yes. I thought he'd say no. So we were kind of in it together, and it was so much fun. But again, I'll go back to that what do we want to accomplish? And we got them to laugh.
We did.
And it was fun. Without words.
There was a couple people, and our friend said, they were looking at us and saying, what are they doing? Kind of this question clearly on their face. I don't understand this, for heaven's sakes.
Yeah.
But most people were, in fact, really laughing and making the connection.
My daughters and their friends laughed all the way home, all the next day. And I remember saying that watching that group laugh was worth $1 million. It was worth making kind of a goofy fools of ourselves, but it was fun.
Well, and I think I think the one little piece about that that caught my attention, and others as well, was the use of the bamboo plants.
Yeah.
I had a couple people talk to me about that. We had bamboo plants, right? And they were in a pot, and we would, when the speakers would make their presentation about the gift or the award, we would follow them to their seat and give them this plant. And I think that made this really nice life connection with the whole thing. And
well, the thing I love about the counseling service annual meeting is it breaks down all the expectations that people have. Oh, I'm going to an annual meeting. It's going to be about numbers and boring, and just talk about how they've done financially or how they've done in terms of services. Right. And every year, I think we look for something that's unexpected to happen at those meetings that will make people laugh.
Right.
Because, as Bob always says, when you have a community that laughs together, all the differences disappear, and everybody's the same, having a good time. And I think we do that at the annual meeting and at the bocce tournament. The two
Talk about bocce. And there's a story. And so I don't know how many people out there who may be watching us or who look for us on the website, because we will be on the website, middleburycommunitytv.org. Very simple to find it, and it's listed under The Story Matters. And so, and bocce is a key thing that you've put a lot of time, and Mark, your husband, and
our whole family.
Your whole family.
Our whole family has. Bocce started out, I believe, with 4 bocce courts. It's like a lawn bowling thing. To be perfectly honest, I had no idea what bocce was before we started doing bocce. But they play it in Special Olympics. So I knew that there was a community of athletes, Special Olympians, who knew how to play bocce. And there was a community of older people in Addison County who also played bocce. And what a great thing to bring all these people together and play together. It doesn't matter what your ability was. It didn't matter what your background was. Or you just play together and have a good time. So we started with 3 courts. And 7 years later, we had almost, I think, 36 courts. It just keeps growing and growing. We have people that have developmental issues. We have people that have size issues and age issues and all the different dividers that we put in our community. But they all just disappear when you're having fun playing bocce.
They do. And it's an exciting time, and it raises funds for a couple of the really important causes, namely the emergency fund, which means that 24 hours a day, if you or anyone has a concern and they need some help, they need someone to talk to, that phone number is in the phone book and in various places, and there's someone on staff that would be ready to make that connection.
24/7, day and night. They work very hard, and it's a hugely important
and it happens when? In August?
The bocce tournament is in August. It's usually around the the week of the 20th, somewhere.
And it happens right over at the rec park,
right,
near the arena.
Right, rain or shine, but we've never had it rain, so knock on wood.
Yeah. And it's become a marvelous point. So when you come to August, please look us up.
Right.
Well, we thank you, Barbara. We had a good time talking, but the time goes by, and so we're very grateful that we could spend time talking.
Yeah.
And we hope you to have, that you out there who are watching, will you pick up this whole theme of conversation and telling stories and listening to stories. It's great for your life and great for the people you work with. Thank you very much.